Success Talks, Conversations with Entrepreneurs. I'm Valentina Bellicova. Please join me in our conversation today with Mason Kealy, founder of Kealy's Beverage Company. Mason, why vodka? I mean, it's not as though the world hasn't got enough vodka brands. They're iconic, well-known, and some historic. Before we delve into today, can we delve into yesterday? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, I'd be happy to talk about myself. I'm actually the first Kealy born in Canada. My family my mother's side comes from New Zealand, and my father's side comes from England and Ireland. So my parents moved out here. I was the first Kealy born in Canada. I was actually raised in White Rock. And I went to school in White Rock, went to Semiamu and graduated. My interests were more computers actually at the time. I was a bit of a tech kid. I worked at the age of 15 working with a computer company doing tech support work actually. And after I graduated high school, I started my first computer company myself. I didn't go directly into college or university. I actually used that time working with my business to, build some good connections in the tech industry. It was pretty daunting at the time because I was only, 17, 18. And a lot of adults at that time didn't really have the time of day for you unless there was something on the computer they couldn't figure out. My business I put on hold for some time because I actually got picked up by Xerox, and I worked for Xerox for 5 years as a mainframe technician with some of their newer printing equipment that came out. Very interesting things you'd learn too. For instance, I didn't know that Xerox had their own university in Leesburg, Virginia, which I went down to there. So I got to do a little bit of traveling, which was exciting while I was learning. And I stayed with the Xerox team for about 5 years, and after that I restarted up my business. I restarted up my business and I went to university. I ran into a little bit of a barrier where Xerox wouldn't make anyone managers unless they had a business degree. And I didn't have a business degree, I just had a lot of tech savvy. So I actually asked for support to go to university and become a manager, and they said they didn't do that. So I actually quit and went back to university. I went locally actually. I went to Kwantlen Polytech in Surrey and Cloverdale. I got my Bachelor of Business Administration, majoring in entrepreneurial leadership. It's an excellent program, very, very good hands-on program. And then after I graduated that in 2004, I had been running my business, for about 3 or 4 years. While I'd been going to university, I'd been making a lot of partners with the local auto plan dealers, like the insurance brokers, because I found that they were very reliant on their computers and on the internet. If the internet went down, they couldn't do business because they couldn't contact ICBC. So I did quite well with that. I worked it long enough to pay off my student loans, and that was really my only direction. Then, because of family matters, I actually moved with my brother up north to Fort St. John. And that was a little bit of a struggle actually for me because I had a business that focused on insurance and auto plans. And in Fort St. John, there was only 2 auto plans. So I had a target market of 2.
Oh.
So I couldn't really continue that part of my business up there, but I adapted and I changed, and I actually started working with some oil field companies, and I started doing industrial instrumentation up there and calibrating turbines, a lot of stuff that's probably not overly interesting to most people.
It's a very long rabbit trail, but I love rabbit trails. And what I am gaining from all of this, Mason, is that you are somewhere deep down, you are born with entrepreneurial roots, and they've taken hold very strongly. So yes, Fort St. John, and then
from Fort St. John, I worked about 2.5 years in the industry, and I ran into a new experience. I had never before worked in minus 40 degrees weather. Unreal how cold that is. And you'd think they'd have their computers inside, but they actually don't. So I worked that for a while, but I didn't like the working conditions as much, and I actually had a friend that worked in a bank. There was an opportunity for a small business manager in Fort St. John to help small businesses. So I thought, why not give it a try? So I got a job working with the bank, and I got inside. I was a lot happier, and believe it or not, bankers are big drinkers, so I was exposed to a lot of the alcohol industry through that. And then I started looking into, where I was going to go, because I knew working for, for the bank is a solid job, but I've kind of got a free spirit in a way. I like working for myself. I like, being able to go wherever I want to go, right? I had some friends, which I had made through the States, who ran distilleries down there, and I kept in contact with them. We talked about the industry.
In Kentucky, perhaps.
Massachusetts, actually.
I'm just thinking about, all those moonshine stills that we are so familiar with,
Little
and it's
bourbon boys.
Tennessee and Kentucky, I think, are the two, and parts of Virginia, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, but Massachusetts.
Yeah, Massachusetts.
Wow,
yeah.
good old staunch, righteous.
I started to get, in my discussions, I get very, interested in alcohol and the business. And my roots are Irish. I've always been a good drinker. I enjoy the industry, and that's one important thing for it, right? But I also, through my discussions with my friends, I thought I had found an opportunity where you said there's so many alcohols out there, and actually some of my friends, there's a famous saying that they have. They say, the road is paved with failed vodka products, right? And it's true. There's so many out there, but I saw this opportunity, and it actually came from reflecting on another Canadian, Dan Aykroyd. He's doing the Crystal Head vodka out in Ontario. And he's using a newer technology filtration system. He's using diamond dust nanoparticle filters. And essentially what these are doing is they're taking out all of the oils out of the vodkas that give them those harsh tastes and smells. It really, really purifying these alcohols. And I thought, okay, well, this is the way the industry's moving. But what was interesting to me was no one else was doing it. It was just him, and I looked into it more, and it turns out that, if you were to take a famous brand like Grey Goose or Belvedere or something like that, that's very established, if they were to embrace that new technology and those new filters, they wouldn't taste like Grey Goose and Belvedere anymore, because all those oils and that taste profile is what makes those products. So they would radically change the product. So unless you were starting, you couldn't really embrace all this new technology. And I thought, well, you know what? Now that new technology's out, why not create a super, super premium alcohol at a reasonable price using newer technology that's actually better than the older established ones out there? That was where my logic started, right? And I set a goal for myself. From that I said, how cool would it be to have my name on an alcohol in a liquor store, right? That was my goal. And once I got there, I really had to do some rethinking, because I didn't know where I was going from there. I was able to get a vodka product made. I wanted to do something very different, though, because, it's all about marketing. And I knew I was coming into an industry that had massive, massive money behind all my competitors. And there's me, we're like a small family business. I've got 4 children, my wife and I just worked regular middle-class jobs, right? And I had to find creatively a way to approach the market that didn't require massive amounts of money, right? While competing against people who did have those budgets.
Right. Were you ever able to connect with Dan Aykroyd?
Honestly, I haven't tried yet. I really should, I really should, because I mean, that guy's awesome. He was a Ghostbuster, you know, right? So it's, I was a little bit of a geeky kid growing up, right? And I would love to meet Dan Aykroyd one day. And we are the two only products in Canada that use this diamond filtration. So I just found I got swept up with so many things to do. No, but if this video ever gets to him, I'd love to talk to him.
So, out of curiosity, when you say that Dan Aykroyd and now yourself are the only ones who are using this diamond dust filtration, how did that come about? The diamond dust, does that have much to do or anything to do with our diamond industry up north?
Diamonds are actually able to powderize to nanoparticle size, so you can make a nanoparticle filter from them. It can be done with other filters as well, and this isn't. This is a new technology to the alcohol industry. It's not a new technology overall. Nanoparticle filtration is used in other things like specialty water purification and whatnot. So if you've got people with immunity compromisations in their system, you know, right, they're going to need things that don't have bacteria and whatnot in them. So, which is great about vodka because we're a natural disinfectant pretty much, right? So you're never going to have to worry about those foreign bacterias.
And yet another good reason to have vodka. The idea was great, but you didn't have a business plan, per se. I mean, or you had an idea, you had an end vision. What happened between I'm going to start a vodka company and the end vision? There must have been a lot of twists and turns. But did you have anything formal? Typically banks, and having worked for a bank, you know that they want a full business plan to back anything up or to lend you even a little bit of money. So what did your business plan look like?
That's a great question, actually. And, you know, I know a lot of entrepreneurs that are like, I don't want to do a business plan. It's just, I already know all the stuff. Why write it down? And yeah, I had a formal business plan. And I'd recommend any entrepreneur going into a business to have that formal business plan, not for anyone else, but for themselves. It's a guide that, like, it'll change and mature. It's something you can update. And anyone that's run a business too, you get hit with 1,000 things a day. And I mean, I don't know about other people, but my memory gets shot at the end of the day, and I can't remember half the things, and I find it actually keeps me on track, you know. So yeah, I did have that business plan going in, you know. Was it accurate how I followed it? Not always, you know, and I was dreaming in Technicolor for some of it, you know, right? But I did have that kind of formal guideline, and I did follow it. It took a lot longer than I thought it would. I started the business process in 2010, and that's when I incorporated our company. But I didn't actually get any product onto the shelves until 2013.
What was it that took 3 years from idea to shelf?
It took a lot of time for, you know, the design of the product and the labeling and the bottle. Like, for instance, when I was designing, you know, the bottle and the labeling,
Beautiful bottle, by the way. That alone should be a collector's item. That bottle, I think, is beautiful. So, when you were talking about that, yes.
Yeah, well, you know what, and that's exactly the reaction that we wanted to get. What we noticed was a lot of the bottles out there, you know, they'd have a label on the neck, they'd have a label here, then they'd have a label down here. And I thought, you know, why not create, instead of just creating a bottle, why not create something that's very artsy, you know, that looks very, very appealing? So we thought, let's minimize the labeling as much as possible, right? Just so they have our name, they have our information, everything we have to do for legalities. And let's custom design the bottle so it really stands out, you know. And we were working with a younger Australian fellow who helped us actually do the design of the bottle. And because we're using a French winter wheat, this design going up here is actually the image of the wheat. And then we used the diamond texturing down the side, which always kind of, I don't know, always kind of reminds me of like grandma's old crystal, you know, right? The way that it was done. And that's exactly the reaction I love to get from people is, oh my goodness, it's gorgeous, you know, right?
So did you have this bottle designed especially for you?
Yes.
That's amazing. I thought maybe that you were just very fortunate in being able to find something that is so well, it's beautiful. It really is beautiful.
Thank you.
What were some of the challenges?
Obviously, Canada's not an easy country as far as laws to work with for starting up an alcohol company. We did use quite some time at the beginning in actually wanting to build a small micro distillery in British Columbia. But in 2010, it was so difficult. The laws were so hard. You know that they're changing now, and they're making it much easier for craft distilleries. But back then, it was very, very daunting. So we actually had to look elsewhere. We had a recipe. We had an idea of what we wanted our product to look like. And we actually reached out to partners outside of Canada. So we got a larger distillery in France, in southern France, to make our recipe for us. And we also have a glass manufacturing plant in Shanghai, China, that makes the bottles for us. And just reaching out to those individuals in other countries. That took a lot of time, establishing contracts and everything with them, right? We built a partnership with a distribution company in British Columbia named Beverage who's helped us get into a lot of the stores out there. And then the last part was working with the government, right? And actually probably the hardest part was getting accepted into the government stores in BC. I found that there was a big resistance to embrace locally owned products. There really was, because I wouldn't take up the 12 bottles of shelf space that Smirnoff would have because I just had one product, right? And that was something that we really had to push hard for. I'd hate to say beg and plead, but I wouldn't be lying, right? but we got there, right? And one of my favorite quotes is actually it's life is a series of moving from one mistakes to another, and being entrepreneurial is someone that'll move from one mistake to another and not lose enthusiasm, right?
Absolutely. I think that is the mantra of all lean startups these days. Move, test, correct, move, test, correct. Sometimes that test and correct means going back and then one step and then going forward two or three. And I'm finding that lately there seems to be a great deal of energy amongst all kinds of people, people who have worked and been employed but now want a business of their own. Young people, the millennials, who don't ever want to work for anyone, and they've got this immense drive. So there's a tremendous amount of energy and lots of lean startups in our area here. So you were one of the earlier ones.
Yeah. It's not a new concept, obviously, entrepreneurialism, but I find it's getting embraced by more and more people, which is wonderful. So I actually wrote a couple of quotes down, and these quotes I actually have in my office up on the board, and as an entrepreneur, I use them kind of as a mantra. There's so many people that you can take positive guidance from. And that first one that I said, it's actually the exact quote is, "Success is walking from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm." And surprisingly enough, that was Winston Churchill, like a long time ago, right? But that's very true, like to be an entrepreneur, to be successful, you have to be enthusiastic and you have to just keep marching forward. When I first started my computer business, I actually I listened to a lot of motivational tapes, right? Because I found, I'd go out and I'd talk to a business and they'd say, "No, thank you." And you really take it to heart. You're like, my product's really good, right? I had a friend that was in Amway, and they had all these tapes that I would listen to. And there was one guy on that tape, I don't even know who the name was, but he was a sales motivator. And he had this saying, he'd say, "Some will, some won't, so what," right? And when you approach sales like that, not everyone's going to like you. Not everyone's going to love your product. Some people will say, oh, like this is terrible, right? But you just you got to move forward. You got to be confident in yourself, and you got to be enthusiastic, and people will, pick up on that, right? And another quote that I have is actually from Albert Einstein, which I love, and it says, "Logic will get you from A to B. Imagination will get you everywhere." I find that is so applicable to entrepreneurs because a lot of the inventions that we're having modern day today is basically someone saying, well, why am I doing this? There's got to be, as Kevin O'Leary says on Dragon's Den, there's got to be a better way, right? And that's where a lot of these startups are coming from. People are saying, what, we can make it better. So I find that quote drives me forward. And my last one, which I really like, is the most valuable thing you can make is a mistake. You can't learn anything from being perfect.
Absolutely. I love that too. I've met many people who would like to start something and they keep putting off because it isn't perfect yet, or it isn't properly researched, or they don't have this and that. Years go by and they never start. Actually, one of my favorite quotes from one of my mentors is, you don't have to get it right, you just have to get it going. So kudos to you.
I really like that. The guy that came up with that quote was actually Adam Osborne, and he was the fellow that invented the first portable computer.
Mason, our audience is mostly entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs can benefit enormously from successful entrepreneurs like yourself. What if you were to give just one big tip to entrepreneurs, something that you learned, the one thing that you might have done differently, what would that be?
Don't get too arrogant. Don't get to the point where you say, this is the best product in the world, this is going to top everything, and I don't need to listen to anyone else. One thing I could have probably done better, I found my biggest stumbling block was dealing with the government. I found liquor control in British Columbia, I just kept banging against brick wall after brick wall. And maybe if I had have taken the time to go to other individuals that deal with that branch of the government more, I could have got some really good tips. I could have saved some time. I am currently right now the only person in British Columbia that owns a vodka brand that is not made in British Columbia. And I actually, a good friend of mine who I actually worked with in the Chamber of Commerce in North Vancouver, Naomi Yamamoto, she's actually the Minister of Small Business right now. I told her, I said, look, I'm treated as an import by the BC Liquor Board. And, fair enough, my product does come from another country because I outsourced it. But it's 100% BC owned. Like, we own it as a family. When people buy my product, the profits aren't going out of country. But they won't actually treat me as a BC company, a BC brand.
And how does that impact you?
Well, it impacts me huge because I'm not allowed to go through the same processes as others in the industry. Like someone that makes, say for instance, a craft product here, they make their product, they control their product. So if they, say for instance, they want to go to a charity event, right, and they want to give away some product, they can take their product out of their warehouse, bring it there, do the event, record that they gave that away, right? For me, because even though I own everything about the product, because I bring it in from another country, as soon as it comes in, it gets locked up in a warehouse. Only the BCLDB is allowed to touch it. And if I want to go to a charity event and give that product away for free, like for instance, on Monday, we're doing an event with the VSO, the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra in Vancouver, and we regularly donate a bottle for their silent auctions, for their charity fundraising. As the brand owner of Kealy's Diamond Vodka, I have to go to the local liquor store, pay full markup on my own product, buy it, and give it away. Which makes no sense when I can make it for, obviously, without having the government markup applied to it. They're essentially charging me for them doing nothing so I can give my product away free at charitable events. It makes no sense at all.
It makes no sense at all. I agree, but you know, does government always make sense?
Well, I actually went all the way to Susan Anton.
Yes, was she helpful?
No. She basically said, look, you're the only exception in British Columbia, and it's just not enough to change policy for. So I basically got brushed off.
That's very discouraging because as a relatively young company, well, a young country in a with a young company, you would think that there would be all kinds of support for entrepreneurs to help us to get, I mean, it contributes to the economy, it contributes to jobs, it contributes to growth. I'm a little astounded in that respect. So I'm just thinking, you know, if I can just kind of backpedal a little bit over here. I've heard once, and I think it's a very interesting question or a very interesting thought, that before the age of 21, there are 3 times in our life prior to that time that we said yes or no to something. And that made all the difference. Can you think of any such time? And would you care to share such a decision, whether it was a yes or a no? You don't have to say, but it would be nice to know what it was about.
Well, you know, I'd love to say I had an opportunity in my past to say, to look back and say, you know what, this person was offering me something extraordinary, and I said no to it, and I kicked myself for it. Ironically enough, that never happened to me. I never really had a lot of entrepreneurial guidance. I didn't have anyone big take me under their wing. It never happened to me. I'd actually have to say that I did say no in a situation when I was younger, in my early 20s, and it changed the direction of my life. I had left high school, even though I was good at tech, I left with a scholarship for criminology. And I actually, my very first 2 courses I ever took at Kwantlen were in criminology. And I had a horrible experience with the criminology instructor there. Because I was really good at computers, I wanted the RCMP as a special division that tracks down cybercrime and, you know, like online predators and stuff like that. And I actually wanted to be part of that. I thought that would be very cool. Because I said no to criminology, even though I had a scholarship, it led me down this different path, and I ended up getting into alcohol instead. So
That's very interesting because that was a huge opportunity, one would think. And by saying no, it took you a different path. One of the things that you've mentioned was that along the way, there were a lot of people that helped you. Can you mention some of the collaborators that have taken you from zero to hero?
yeah, no, I'm happy to. I've had some very key people that have really contributed towards me being able to build this brand. The most important collaborator that I've had through this would be my wife, Nicole. She's allowed me to do so many things, and she's done a lot of the back office work. We have 4 children, you know, so when she's working full time, I'm working full time. We've got 4 children, and then we say, hey, let's start a business. Some people say to me, how can you even do that? You know, we can't believe you're still sane. And that's probably debatable, but Nicole really helps hugely with that. And outside of the family, you know, I've had some incredible success with partners that I've worked with. One of my good friends, he's a celebrity chef, Chef Victor Bongo. We actually met at Eat Vancouver in Vancouver, and he's a huge supporter of our product. Love working with the guy. He's made some great food creations. Dawn Donahue, she's very, very connected in the charity industry, and we do lots of charity work together. I found, you know, my advice for any entrepreneur, if you can get out there and work with charities, you're not only giving back to the community, but you're getting great access to potential customers. builds a very good character image for your company. Another excellent collaborator is actually the Giggle Dam in Poco, a comedy dinner theater. I've worked with them actually right from the start. They were actually the first restaurant to ever take our product on, and they've been huge supporters of us as well. So just making those great connections. And then my most current collaboration, and actually a mentorship that I'm working with, is a partner of mine. His name's Richard Shaw, and he's a young budding entrepreneur from the UK, from London, England. And I actually met him through another Kealy that lives in the UK. And he's decided that he'd love to start a distribution company for us in the UK. He's actually come down, he's staying with us for 6 months in Canada to learn the business, learn the product, and we've been collaborating, the best way to tackle the UK market. And then he's gonna go back out there and raise a little hell.
The $1 million. No, let's make that a $1 billion question. What are your plans for Kealy's Beverage Company for the future?
Well, firstly, if I can introduce Richard Shaw. Come on over here, Richard. As I said...
You guys, do you like a shot of Kealy's Diamond Vodka? This is some of our R&D range.
I'll pick that one. You have one as well.
Oh, thank you so much.
So, the first thing that we are working on just currently right now is working with Richard. He's going to bring our product to the UK. Hopefully he's going to meet with excellent success out there. I'm actually going to be supporting from Canada as well. We're going to be collaborating back and forth, and we hope that springs forth all sorts of opportunities in the UK. And also, as you might notice, these are multicolored. They're not the white regular diamond vodka that we have, because also in the future we're looking at building a craft distillery. So now that the laws are changing and giving us the opportunities, there is going to be a whole string of products that's going to come out once we get that opportunity.
Now that's super exciting. This question to you, Richard.
Absolutely.
You've been here for not quite 6 months, and you've been under the wings of a major entrepreneur here. What's it like being mentored by a successful entrepreneur? Can you share a little bit of an insight with others here?
It's very important that I've been able to work under Mason, because one of the challenges that I'm going to have when I go back to the UK is that I have never worked in the distribution market before. In fact, I've had student enterprises throughout my years, from when I was before high school, actually in elementary, the equivalent elementary, we call it primary, all the way through university. But this has been my most major venture. So seeing the mistakes and being able to, and also because Mason, he's got so many things going on, his family, his work life. I can use the time that I have here to spot where things can be improved back, so that we're back here and also in the UK. So being mentored by Mason gives me the massive opportunity to make sure that I'm not making the same mistakes, but I'm gaining from the same successes that he's been able to achieve in the last 5 years.
Well, we certainly wish everyone a very, very successful road forward. On that note,
To success.
To success.
Thank you for watching. We will have many more interviews with other entrepreneurs. Please subscribe. Till next time, see you again.